You touched a little bit about it, Gulamabbas, but what does a typical day in the life of an interior designer look like? Like, is it, I know there's, as you've mentioned, talking to clients and then sitting down and doing the design. Is there anything else? Is it a lot of long hours? Do you visit a lot of sites? Like, what does that look like?
So, in a nutshell, it's crazy. A typical day is a crazy day.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome to our this edition of Career Conversations. Today with us we have someone who is responsible for making our spaces interesting for us to thrive and survive in. My name is Farhan Yusuf, your host for these career conversations as always, and I am very happy to introduce our guest for today, Brother Gulamabbas Datoo. Welcome, Gulamabbas.
Thank you so much, Farhan.
Karibu. So, Gulamabbas, jumping right in, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do in the space of interior design.
Okay, so I think to keep it simple, I started as a graphic designer, and I worked in the advertising field for over 12 years. And then it became a little challenging given the shift in the industry. Lots of people started having in-house designers and stopped using agencies. So the agencies were left mostly with breweries to work with, and that's where the challenge came in. So I had to sort of now diversify. Since childhood, I've been a very creative person. I've always liked experimenting with colors and things and moving things around. And that's when I thought that, okay, you know what, this might be some scope for me. And that's how I jumped into interior design. So I've been consulting for quite a few agencies in between, uh, even doing a little bit of marketing. So my background has come from from graphic design. But then, like I said, this is where my passion also lied. And that's how I pursued my career in interior designing.
That interesting. I mean, we have conversations with so many people who always talk about evolving career journeys, and I think that is something that I personally find very interesting. And I'm always saying to our listeners that I like these kinds of examples because they show a level of adaptiveness that I think is extremely important in today's job market, where even if you are doing something or you're pursuing something, if you sort of meet a challenge or whatever, you can always grow out and like do something else or do something further. I was going to ask you why you chose this as a career path, but I think you've already told us, it's your interest in design and and doing those kinds of things. Personally, I think why I can't do design is because it takes a lot of focus and patience and sitting down and like sitting down for hours. Is that your experience as
Because
well?
we're always inventing. So one thing that I pride myself with is we avoid doing anything repetitive. So whenever we've taken up any project, it's always been unique. The designs have always been unique. So we try to understand the client. We understand where they are coming from, what they are trying to achieve, or rather, what's their comfort zone, sort of. And then we come up with a design that tells a story. It's not just about painting a house blue or getting a green sofa, but it's supposed to tell you a story. So when I feel that when I enter a place, any space that I enter, it should tell me a story. If it's not telling me a story, then I'm sorry, you need to hire me.
Interesting, interesting. So Gulamabas, tell us a bit about when you started doing interior design. Did you have to like do some kind of course for it, or is it just like self learning? And what do you use right now as your tools when you're doing interior design?
Okay, so unfortunately, I did not have the pressure of studying further. There are uh, lots of circumstances came along, and I couldn't. But this is all self-learned. So I've self-learned a lot of small online courses I've done, of course, but it's more about it's the passion and the creativity that you have in you. is what drives this further. So you can take the most expensive course, I feel, with anything creative for that matter, be it graphic design or interior design. You can take the most expensive, extensive course, but it all comes down to what how much passion you have about that, the field, sort of. So, for example, even for my graphic design, I studied in India. Unfortunately, even then, I could not complete my studies. Lots of things came up in between. But when I completed my first semester, or my first year, sorry, I had sent in class. I came out with the highest points. After that, there was no scope for graphic design at that time back in Kenya. I was working for Scanner, and that's where I joined again as a junior graphic designer. And by the time, just before I left, that's after 4.5 years, I was already promoted to assistant creative director. So 4 years was just amazing at Scan. Uh, but even then, when we were at Scan, there are a lot of big projects coming in, and I was always inclined towards doing more on the interior parts of it, or into fabrications for events. So I think I saw my interest spark up over there.
Thank you, Gulam. And in terms of like, so what do you use right now as like, how do you actually do the interior designing of it all? Like, what are your tools that you use?
So honestly speaking, my tools are Illustrator and Photoshop. Unfortunately, and I don't have the patience to learn something new at the moment. So I still use. I am very old school sort of. For me, it's sketching out stuff, and then maybe if the client really wants to see something, then I'd probably put up a 2D design on Illustrator or Photoshop. If the client is huge and wants big things, then I'd give it up to an artist to do 3D renderings for me. But as for me myself, it's just mostly sketching and Photoshop.
Interesting. I think I feel like this is the first time I'm speaking to a true disruptor. And I think, that's the point of these conversations, that we want to show people that there are many different pathways as far as careers are concerned. It's a great story to hear that you face challenges with your studies, you face challenges with, even starting off in your career, but you figured out what else you are able to do with it. And I think the other sort of message for me is I feel like when I'm speaking to different students and all that, there's a lot of like interest in graphics design. I think we have a lot of creativity that's happening, and young people are very creative, but many a times I hear this statement of like, oh, but graphics design is saturated as a market, there are too many of them. And I'm always like, you have a skill set, you can figure out what else to do with it, and think about how do you, diversify yourself and look at, some other means. And I think you show a great example of how that can be done, right? Uh, you touched a little bit about it, Gulam Abbas, but what does a typical day in the life of an interior designer look like? Like, is it, I know there's, as you've mentioned, talking to clients and then sitting down and doing the design. Is there anything else? Is it a lot of long hours? Do you visit a lot of sites? Like, what does that look like?
So, in a nutshell, it's crazy. A typical day is a crazy day. Um, the unfortunately in our country, I don't think people appreciate creativity, or they don't value creativity. Right? Interior designing means you come up with a concept, you get contractors, and you pull through. Yeah, until you achieve what you're looking for. Unfortunately, here it doesn't work. If I had to approach a client and tell them, okay, you know what, I'm going to charge you 5 million shillings just for consulting as to what your house should look like, it's going to freak out. So what happens is we have to then jump in, go on, not a mile, but miles further to do up the constructing job as well. So that's where the biggest challenge is. There's a lot of contrasting work that we need to not only overlook but take up. So again, coming back to your question, a typical day is uh, waking up in the morning and you've already planned the prior day what your day is going to be like with the fundis, with your suppliers, or if you need to go shopping. So we do a lot of purchasing for the clients as well, personal shopping, as in, what kind of sofas, what kind of drapes you want, what carpet you go right. So a typical day is, yeah, being on site with the fundis on their heads, because the minute you leave them, it's a big mess. So yeah, crazy. You just with the fundis, getting things done, maybe step out a little bit, try to look for new stuff in the market, because you want to innovate all the time. You don't want to just keep repeating the same thing over and over. So yeah, like I said, in a nutshell, it's just a very crazy day.
Well, I mean, and I think that's again the reality of, some of our contexts in that I think, and this is for me, these are great insights to hear, right? Because I also feel many a times young people, look at careers from a very like TV perspective. Like you'll see, a TV show, or you'll see a movie, and you'll see a person, doing a particular profession, and you'll find it very glamorous, and you'll be like, okay, this, but you don't sort of realize the context on the ground, which is one of the things that you're saying, is that, interior design doesn't, especially if you want to make a living out of it, right? Like if you are just doing interior design as a hobby, then perhaps you can be like, I'll draw something for you and I'll leave it and you can run with it. But if you're looking to turn it into a viable sort of business opportunity, then you have to, like do the whole 9 yards, as they say, like do everything, which is, I think, an interesting thing for people to learn. How iterative is the process, Ghulam Abbas, in the sense that, so you come up with a design, you show a client, you start doing the work. Does it change as you are doing it, or is it that what you have done stops right there?
No, that barely happens. So when we put in a drawing and or a design and we show it to the client, we make sure to mention that what you see on paper or on screen is only 80%. Yeah, that's not 100%. Because what you see on paper when you actually go to do it, sometimes it's like clothes. When you look at something, it looks really nice and appealing. But when you put it on yourself, you realize that, okay, that this is not happening.
Or like food ads in restaurants. Like I'm always like, those are the biggest lies.
So tempting and appealing. The minute you put it with your mouth, you're like, okay, what did I not get into? So yeah, there's a lot of changes that happens in the process, and I usually encourage that, because there are some clients who are very adamant that, oh no, you know what, you showed this to me and I want exactly that. But we are only going to improvise this, not to try and con you out of, or to make more money out of it. So those changes do happen in the process. We encourage it, and we do encourage our clients on keep visiting the site when the work is going on. Because many a times, or just in the past, and that's where we learned our mistakes from, that the clients don't really bother. We just go on with the work. When it comes to the final stages, when you want to do the finishing, is when they say, oh no, you know what? I think what if you would have put the door there? Or what if this cabinet was on the other side? And that's where the whole challenge comes in. And you know what? Okay, they're going to end up paying for it, but it's the whole process of redoing it. So that is something that I hate doing, and that it really disrupts my flow completely.
But it's part of the
But
part of
power up, yes. Part we have to follow. You have to be very patient. There's one thing I've learned in this path is you got to be very patient.
Ah, well, I guess for any very strongly customer facing, careers, that's, and I know customer service can be a challenge. So I understand what you have to go through. Uh, Gulam, and I'm asking a lot of these questions just out of interest because I find it fascinating, right? If if you had two projects that come to you, one is a new house that is being built and you are supposed to start designing it from scratch, and then you have another project where there is already a house and they are asking you to redesign. There's already a design, you have to sort of redesign it. Which one would you find more exciting and why?
It's hard to answer a question. It really depends on the project or what the client is looking for in terms of what I have to, or what the final product is going to be. So for me, both are exciting. See, taking something old and giving it a whole new look is more challenging. So I think, okay, so to answer the question, I think that is more exciting. Something that is new and starting from scratch, okay, I'm going to feel good about it because you know what, I started from scratch and I created it. But the excitement level of redoing something is just something else. So for me, I find that more challenging because you know what? People are going to judge after they look, okay, this house or this space looked so and so. And now you and me the responsibility of completely transforming it. So am I going to live up to it or not? So I think that that's where my excitement lies.
It's interesting. I mean, you seem like someone who likes taking on challenges. I can think of a few people who, if I ask them the same question, they would probably say, "I'd love to start from scratch." You know, so that's nice. Uh, Gulam Abbas, what are some of the challenges that you have faced in this path? I mean, you've spoken about obviously, the pivot that you had to make into this career. You've spoken about the, day-to-day challenges that are there in terms of you having to do sometimes things that may not necessarily be in the scope of an interior designer and going beyond that. Are there any other specific challenges that you would like to tell our audience?
So there are quite a few challenges. Biggest one being the Fundes, of course. That's my biggest headache always. They're not disciplined, so sometimes a project can debate because your Fundi decided not to show up for a day or two. So that is one of the biggest challenges. The other challenge is when payments are defaulted. So that's a very big challenge. Another challenge is would be material. Sometimes a lot of material is not available locally that you need to procure, and that makes the project expensive. And if you're going to be adamant and stick to what is available here, then you'll not be getting different. So, and like I said, I think patience is most important because again, you're coming down to customer service. So you want your client to be happy, but at the same time, I think you also need to be a little firm because they've entrusted you with something. I think, then they should be able to trust you with the decisions that we make.
So, to our audience, when, one point of these conversations is also, I think, for our audience is hopefully to listen and hear about some of the opportunities, because when we are discussing some of these challenges with professionals like yourself, Gulam Abbas, I think you are also speaking to. So, for example, when I hear you speak, I saw that there's a supply chain issue. So, we clearly need to figure out how to, either make some of those materials locally if at all we are able to, or think about how we can, source materials. There's of course clearly we need more professional vocational sort of services. So, for example, you keep mentioning, the challenge that you face dealing with fundis, etc. So clearly there's a scope for like better quality, more professional, like those kinds of vocational services, which are, I think, all opportunities, right? For people to pursue and think about. So that's great to know, because I also feel like, Tanzania is a country, we are still growing, right? We have so many. I think our infrastructure is still sort of being built. And for me, that is a great opportunity for interior design, right? Like the more buildings we are making, the more structures we are creating, the more that market, I think, will grow. And happy to hear what you feel about that. But I think we need to figure out some of these things that will help us take advantage of that.
Most definitely.
Do you see a sort of growing market with everything that's happening?
Uh, it's hard to say, but I think I still would say yes. There is scope, but like I said, you need to be willing to go the extra mile.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there definitely is scope, and it's an interesting line. It's not easy. It's never easy, but it's interesting. You know, at the end of the day, no matter how hard a project is, no matter how many obstacles that you've had to go through, it's when your client, when you're done with the project, and when your client walks in, and that first time that the smile that comes on his face is just so fulfilling. Like you know that okay, I have achieved something. So that just makes me. Sometimes you don't even. It's not even a very profitable project, but just at the end of the day, just seeing the client happy and that you've been part of a transformation of his life. I think that's what counts, at least for me. But that's what counts.
And on that note, Ghulam Abbas, great point. Is there, and without giving us names or specifics, is there any like one project that you did and you are like, this is why I am in this profession? Have you had that moment already, or is it still something that's coming?
So in my entire career, I would say I've had it three times. So yeah, and, especially a very recent project that we've done. It's a coffee shop. It's going to be opening soon. I think I've literally outdone myself, and I'm really proud of it. I just can't wait for it to open up. It's something totally different. It's very fresh, but it's also kind of a little rustic. So I don't know, it's a fusion of classic and mod. So I'm really excited about this.
Great. After the podcast, I'm going to ask you the name of that cafe because I mean, I am a huge sort of consumer of. I truly believe, and that's why I think this career is very important, and I wish more people go into it because even from like a mental health perspective and all that, I really feel that our spaces really govern or facilitate creativity, thought processes, etc. And to be honest, with some of the traveling that I have done, when I look at a lot of the spaces that we have in country, I really wish we would do more. Like I go to places, I go to offices, and I'm like, I wish we were a bit more creative because I know in other places in the world, I've gotten into rooms where I go in and I'm immediately, excited, or I'm immediately, charged. Whereas here that may not happen. I mean, one of the things that and this is now me putting out my wish list, right, is also for our for our public sector and government to also think about that, because you go to places where you have like interesting graffiti, you have highways that are colored, you have like there's just so much, and I really feel that that really adds to people's productivity, and I feel like we need to have more conversations about those kinds of spaces. Do you agree?
Totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, like I think I even mentioned earlier, when you walk into a space, it's supposed to tell your story. I mean, you walk into a place and okay, this guy's so done with life. Like, I mean, what is he even doing? Sort of a thing. So I feel not to be judgmental, but when you walk into a space that is owned by a person, I think you can say a lot about that person, depending on his surroundings. So I think it's important to have your interiors done right. It doesn't necessarily need to be expensive. It just needs to be tasteful, and it needs to portray what you believe in or what you stand for.
Yes, and I hope again, as I hope this sort of session also becomes that it creates that thought process in people, because I do think that there are many. I think we don't have a lot of awareness about interior design as a field, as a career, the opportunities attached to it, etc. But then also this thought process around, I think there are many people who feel that it is very expensive, or that is something that just happens in the West. It doesn't really happen here, so I'm hoping that through having this conversation, we sort of, of course, somehow market you as a professional, and I hope people reach out to you, but also market the career, because I do see a lot of creativity in young people. And I think we need to find different ways to explore that. Gulamabbas, I think I heard you mention something about events as well. Is that something that you also do, like designing events and?
Well, yes, used to be something that I was really into, but I think of late I've just a lot of it sort of grown out of it. But yes, there's a lot of event management that you used to do as well. So event setup, managing the event, that was something that at some point in time I had really gotten into. Um, just to bring this up, every year in Muharram, the YS does the walkthrough, and I think that's where I can really put in all my energy. We are always trying to improvise, and when you look at the exhibition, there is so much details that we look into, like every time detail, all the way to from the costumes to what the floor should look like, what the lighting should be like in the room. So you see, it's not it's a pop up sort of exhibition, right? It's going to go down. It's a 3 to 4 day exhibition, but there is so much work that goes into it. And because you mentioned that there are so many youths in our community, who you think have the potential and are creative. Very true. We have a team all from our community. We have a team of creative people. So our production team, it's not a very big thing, but the creativity that flows to them is just, you know what, every year they outdo themselves. And inshallah, this year also we've already started planning, and I think it's going to be one of its kind. We have an amazing team, and like I said, amazing creative people on board. So yeah, there is a lot of potential. I think the youth of our community have a lot of creativity in them, and creativity doesn't only mean in actually getting things done. It's also the thought process. So I think more than getting it done, your thought process is important. If you have a creative thought process, you might not be able to put it on paper. It's okay, but that helps. And I mean, I think that's the important part. So same for graphic designers also. You mentioned that a lot of people want to do graphic designing, but are not sure the market is saturated. True, there's a lot of graphic designers out there, but I would not call them graphic designers really, because graphic design is not just about designing something. It's about, like I said again, it's a process. If you're it's this phone, for example, you need to make an ad for a phone. You don't just put a phone there with its features. You need to understand the product. You need to understand the end user, the consumer. This ad or this phone or whatever you're putting, even the color that you're going to use is supposed to tell a story. So I think this is what our youth are lacking at the moment. They think that, okay, I've learned how to use the tools, how to use the software. Okay, I will become graphic designer. It doesn't work. At least I believe so, that everything that you put out there needs to say a story. So same for even in the house, or in an office. I mean, for some people, okay, you know what, I like blue, just put blue. Why are you putting blue? It's not reflecting your black brand. What does blue even mean? I think every color has a meaning. So I think all this, builds up, and coming back to having said, oh yeah, that it's the process. It's a creative process. You need to think to get there. So
I think another sort of alternative, pathway that you need to think about, Gulamabbas, is doing like a master class in storytelling through design. And I know the organizers of this podcast are listening to you, and you might get invited to. But I really think, it's important what you are talking about. And, I am a huge believer in stories and like listening to stories and watching stories. So you are I completely understand what you're talking about, and I do think more and more people need to think about that.
having said that, my company is called GD Interiors. That's sort of the short form for my name, Gulamabbas Datoo. But how it started is, initially I wanted to open a graphic design school. So GDI actually stood for Graphic Design Institute, and things didn't really work out. And then I had this career shift sort of, and I said, okay, you know what? These are my initials, and it really just fits in. So might as well. So that's how, and I think that's how the name also caught on. But yeah, initially this was the plan: GB Interiors and Graphic Design Institute.
Nice. It's interesting how things play out and work out in life. So Ghulam Abbas, in terms of advising students, young people who are listening to this session today, what are some important skills you would say that young people need to develop if they want to get into this career? Like, again, I'll mention some that I think have already come out from our conversations. Of course, I think they need to learn patience. They need to learn, like customer service. Design, as you have mentioned, comes with a lot of creativity, comes with a lot of, innovation, etc. Anything else, like in terms of skills that you can think of?
In terms of skills, I think that about covers it. It's not a bad idea to have a little bit of knowledge in history as well, because like I said, because it's telling a story, and there's a lot that you can take from history. So my inspirations usually come a lot from history, from geography. So an interesting episode, I'll tell you quickly.
No, no, please take it.
We were out. once we were out there, and I saw a bird's nest, and it had this beautiful sort of blue eggs in it, blue and white.
So I guess you also need to be very observant, right? Like you're always looking around, as you mentioned. You got, you got inspiration from what you saw out in nature. Gulamabbas, how do you get your history? Like you said, you need to. Do you read a lot? Do you watch documentaries? How do you get your?
So reading, I'm mostly into fiction, but yes, I do watch a lot of TV. I like watching youth productions. That really gives me. So when you talk about classic movies or classic productions,
Mm. When I was in school, I was not a fan of history or geography as a subject, but I love, and it's very interesting when I say this to people. When I travel, for example, I love going to museums. Uh, which is funny because I never liked history, but I think I like seeing and experiencing it rather than just reading about it. When I go to a museum, and I think another places rather that are very inspirational in terms of our all of like religious structures, right? Like whether you look at mosques or you look at churches, or temples for that matter, like you see a lot of, design that goes into that, and they're, brilliant. I was fortunate enough to have a trip to India recently, and I saw Taj Mahal for the first time, and I was like, wow, but I also, and this is something I would like to discuss with you, Gulam. We are saying that, and because this is a conversation that I had with someone while I was there, where it seems, the purists will tell you that a lot of our design is becoming very superficial, very artificial. Like when you look at those olden time buildings, and that was design, like that was beautiful design. Now what we have is very like it doesn't have a sense of permanence. It's very temporary. Do you have any feelings about the future of design and where it's going?
I'm a little scared because minimalism is taken over. Mm. Yeah, and sort of bad thing, sort of bad thing as well. But so I was going to say, when you're talking about these old structures, their work is so intricate, and you're like, okay, I mean, how do you want to achieve that with the lack of tools or technology rather? They did something so good that it still stands, strong out there. So yeah, it's a little scary because, like I said, we're masking ourselves behind minimalism, and I think at some point creativity is getting overpowered when it comes to that. But like again, I say you can still be minimalistic and yet be creative. So at the moment, one of the other challenges I would say is when the client says he wants it very minimal. I think it's harder to do minimal than going all out and getting things done. 'Cause, he wants to be bold, so he just puts splashes of color. It's so many things that you can do with the space. There's what's to say you in minimal, but again, for me, I still want to tell my story, so I really have to be careful when it comes to that.
So we need to find that balance
We need to find
between
balance.
minimalism, but then also, making sure that the necessary elements are there. And of course, we can't talk about the future of design and not talk about AI.
Well,
Is that also compounding your fears about where we are going?
a little bit, yes. A little bit, yes. Now, so for example, now there's a tool online where you just put in or voice your thoughts of what you want your house to look like, and within seconds it's generated. So okay, now what do I do? Where do I fall here? So of course, at the end of the day, you will need a contractor, not a graphic designer. So it is a little scary, but I think we'll cross the bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, the important thing is, and that's why I asked this question, because I know when you talk about any design related careers, a lot of the people are thinking about that, even if they don't tell you that, like, we have AI and we are seeing all these like graphics things that are happening. It's a big conversation, even on the entertainment side of things and all that. But, what I'm always saying to people is that number one, this will come in like waves, right? In the sense that it won't happen all at the same time. It won't happen everywhere around the world at the same time. Like certain countries or areas will, not buy into some of these things as soon as others will. Also, some people will always value that human connection, and being able to discuss with someone and, create something together. And also, as you rightfully mentioned, because I think this is also an important thing to bring about, is that again, you need to think about how to make yourself a better package, right? And that is what you mentioned from the start, that design is one part of it, but how do you do contracting? How do you take someone to the finish line, etc.? And these are things that I really want young people to think about, because it is the reality that we are living in. Technology is growing. Every day online you see a new conversation about how AI will change this, AI will take these jobs, AI will do this and that. And I think rather than coming to it from a place of intimidation or from a place of fear, I'm always telling people that, like, okay, you can still pursue your passions, you can still pursue your career, just you might have to think about it a bit more smartly, if I may put it that way. And I think, I wanted to end our session on a piece of advice for students. I have given one for them to any sort of last pieces of advice from you.
So I think for anyone out there, for whatever career path they're going to take, it's important that you believe in what you're doing, and I think don't be scared. That's the most important thing. I think be take the leap of faith, take the risk, do it, but be true to yourself and true to your profession. Yeah, I think that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much, Gulamabbas. And I'm so glad that we are able to have someone who exemplifies that, right? Because I think it's very easy for you to hear motivational speakers saying, don't be afraid and do whatever. But, hearing it from people who've actually done it really makes a difference. And I think goes a long way in inspiring our young people. So thank you so much, Gulamabbas, for your time. It was a great conversation. As always, I learned a lot about interior design, and I definitely think you should do a master class on storytelling through design. I will probably attend that as well because of how interested I am. But yeah, thank you so much. And and thank you to our audiences for listening. This is our career conversations focusing on interior design, and we'll see you soon talking about another interesting career.